This is part 3 of my Silksong boss ranking, which will cover bosses 15 all the way to number 1. If you missed either of the previous parts, I'll leave links to both of those videos at the start of the description. With the wheat separated from the chaff, these last 15 bosses are my personal pinnacle of Silksong. But don't take my word for it, let your own voices be heard. I'm hosting a community ranking for the Silksong bosses, where you can rank each boss based on difficulty. Check the description or the pinned comment for a Google form link where you can read all the information. Also, side note, most of my Act 2 footage onwards does have me using the Wanderer's crest, but I did do an entire second playthrough of the game with the basic Hunter's crest, just to see how every boss felt with Hornet's base kit, in case anybody is feeling I made this game too easy with Wanderers. I'm Billy S, and these are my top 15 bosses in Hollow Knight Silksong. At number 15, we have the Clover Dancers, fought at the end of Lost Vidania during Act 3. Dual princes of old Vidania, beloved by their subjects for their grace and for the ballet of death they delivered upon outsiders. For one to love another so similar to themselves, is that selfless or vain? Right, Hornet, being a bit judgmental with that last comment. The Clover Dancers sees you battling the Green Prince and the image of his partner in the depths of his memories. While Hornet entered with the intention of peace, the Green Prince's provocations start a fight you cannot avoid. This fight plays out similarly to the Cogwork Dancers from Act 2, except in this instance you're only able to damage the Green Prince, as the other dancer is an afterimage, forcing you to focus on the one target as best you can. The main mechanic is that this fight is a dance, with the bosses telegraphing their attack patterns with beams of light. Your goal is to predict where they'll move to, ensure you're not in the slash zone, and punish appropriately. At varying points, the dancers can vanish for short moments, creating beams of light that slash across the arena, and after a short moment the dancers will slice along those beams to deal damage. And unlike the Cogwork Dancers, the Clover Dancers have a special Cyclone attack when they meet in the center of the arena, embracing and spinning rapidly to create tornadoes that will rotate in either a clockwise or anti-clockwise fashion. Hornet has to use all her movement tools to dodge this, otherwise you take 2 masks of damage. And at half health, the tempo of the fight changes as the two dancers begin an offset dance, moving one after the other in rapid fashion. For some, this is actually easier to handle than both of them moving at once, while for others, this is where the difficulty truly ramps up, but their attacks remain the same. My main justification for Clover Dancers landing only at number 15 is that the fight is so similar to the Cogwork Dancers, yet ends at a much quicker pace, and only has 2 phases as opposed to the Cogwork's 4 phases. Multiple fights in Silksong got harder variants later in the game, but this is the only instance where I feel the Clover Dancers were easier than their mid-game counterparts. Not to mention, if you've already collected the old hearts for the plot, then taking the conjoined heart of the Clover Dancers feels needlessly cruel. Especially when you display it in your bell home as a memento. That's fucking wild, Hornet! But that all comes down to whether you feel the Green Prince wanted to die or not. One last battle so he can go out of pride and be with the one he loves. At number 14, we have the Last Judge, the guardian of the Citadel's main gate, and one of 2 final bosses for Act 1. Final arbiter of the blasted steps, tasked to ensure only the sinless ever step beyond the Grand Gate. The huge judge likely stood through countless generations, never defeated, never wavering in their charge. Alright, warning, I'm gonna go on a tangent now about the glaring negative of this fight, her boss run back. Now technically this has nothing to do with the boss fight itself, so if you'd rather skip to when I analyze her moves, head to the timestamp on screen now. Otherwise, strap in, because I'm about to enter Silksong difficulty discourse and I might come out the other side a changed man. The Last Judge has a boss runback that is, in my opinion, somewhat self-sabotaging for Team Cherry when it comes to the casual side of their audience. as it ends up feeling like a rather sharp difficulty spike compared to what comes before and after. You have the rather obnoxious conch fly that spawns in on the very first jump in the room, which most players will bonk against multiple times, and while you can skip all the big enemies with a well-timed mid-room shortcut, you're forced to do some late-room bell parkour that might go well the first time, but by the 7th or 8th run back, you're more liable to make mistakes in your platforming as you get impatient when trying to reach the boss. And failing the bell pogos drops you into a bug pit that, when I played, did 2 masks of damage and even had a conch fly hanging out above it. That was since nerfed because even Team Cherry realized it was a bit much, with the bug pits now doing 1 mask of damage and that second conch fly being wiped from existence. Now look, on a second playthrough, this runback was no problem for me, as I was more familiar with the game, and confidence can carry you far. However, on a first playthrough, it's a difficulty spike that could cause many players to drop the game entirely. When you combine this runback, which is tough to initially learn if you're not amazing at the platforming, alongside a boss that does 2 masks of damage per hit, which makes you more liable to do the runback again, and then when you do beat her, you follow it up with getting trapped in the underworks, where you have to pay rosaries every time you need to access a bench because they keep resetting, and you're locked into the area with no way to go backwards until you beat it, it creates a very toxic atmosphere. And this happened when I streamed my Silksong playthrough. On the 3rd stream, I found myself fucking miserable because I was frustrated with the runback, followed by then afterwards entering the underworks with no rosaries to my name. I had to quit for the evening and come back the next day with a refreshed mindset. Then I saw the same thing happen to my partner when he reached the same point in the game. He found the runback tedious, made more mistakes than normal on the platforming because he was rushing to get back to the boss, and it ultimately reflected on his opinions of the fight itself because he couldn't separate her from the runback. It's just a lot to ask the player at this point in the game, especially if you compare the runback for the Last Judge with the runback for Phantom, the other final boss of Act 1. Phantom has you go up 2 shafts avoiding some smoke obstacles. There's no comparison here. What I suspect is that Team Cherry wanted to tell the story of the Pilgrim's Climb being brutal through both the narrative and the gameplay, complete with the final obstacle being a devious test of a player's skill and endurance, but it just doesn't really work for me. And that's not even taking into account players with accessibility issues, who simply do not have the capability to do all of this complex platforming, maybe more than once or twice before dexterity problems take over. They've proven they can do it once, why make them do it again? Silksong difficulty discourse is a fascinating topic. On some points I actually agree with Team Cherry's methods, and on others I think they slid the slider too far. So after all of that, why is she number 14 on this list and not somewhere in the 20s or 30s? Because her fight itself is extremely fun, with a well-telegraphed moveset that builds upon itself as the battle progresses, while remaining fair to the player throughout. She has 3 different attacks she starts with: a spin attack where she spins her Thurible around herself in a protective ward, a throw where she launches the Thurible towards the player before yanking it back, and yes, the ball has a hitbox when it gets pulled in. Lastly, she has a downward slam. You've seen multiple variations of this from other enemies at this point. Shortly into the fight, she'll ignite her weapon, giving each of her moves a fiery follow-up that you have to deal with, but the moveset remains the same. The spin attack now creates fiery rings you have to avoid by sidestepping. The throw attack now has the ball explode shortly after landing. The slam sends out fiery shockwaves in both directions and is the easiest move to punish, and she gains a dash attack where she charges towards Hornet while leaving spots behind her that create pillars of fire you have to avoid. Her moveset doesn't change, it just enhances itself, which I really like. And as all the moves are fire aspected, you can also equip the Magma Bell to reduce the damage of those attacks to just 1 mask, making the fight significantly more manageable. You still have to watch out for her Judgment, where she does her spin attack but has it last for a while, so you're weaving in and out of fire attacks for 6 seconds or so. This attack leaves her exhausted for a few moments after though, making it a perfect time to strike. She's a really satisfying fight to learn, and without that runback, I think she would be in my top 10. Hell, I even love her little explosion when you defeat her, where she can catch you in one last blast to kill ya. It's cruel, as if you do die from this, you will have to complete the fight again, but hey, I never did, so I don't have those negative feelings. At number 13, we have the second Sentinel, fought as part of the final audience wish after reviving them with the Cogheart and encountering them throughout the Citadel. Cogwork Knight of Farloom, once protector of its pilgrims and master of the Scissor Blade. The talent and intelligence of this construct goes far beyond others I have witnessed. They seem less built as a tool to serve than an attempt at life itself. I really like the storyline with the second Sentinel, a cogwork construct from an order of Sentinels who replaced the Pinstresses as the Citadel's protectors. This can be inferred from the lore given by the Pinstress and the Seamstress, as well as from the second Sentinel's ability to wield that signature X-Strike charge attack. But what I really like about the second Sentinel is how, unlike the Pinstress boss fight we covered in the last video, it really feels like this boss is programmed with a set way to fight by their creators, and they can't deviate from those patterns too much. You won't see the second Sentinel whip out hidden moves midway through the fight. They go hard from moment zero, and it's up to you to learn their tells to come out on top. And hey, they only do one mask of contact damage, that's fun. The most notable moves involve combos that attempt to catch the player out, which often was the case with their Gilded Whirl. This attack sees the boss leap upwards into the air at a curve while spinning their blades around them like a whirlwind, which can then be followed up with either a lunge or an energy blade attack. But it's that initial liftoff that's the most dangerous. 2 masks of damage if you get hit, and it throws off your momentum. Everything else in their kit is more reactive, and I found myself playing the passive role across both my playthroughs. I do like that due to the way their energy blade attacks are programmed, you always have a decent safe space to heal in the air, as they can't send those energy blades upwards. But you're still at risk due to the whirl. Second Sentinel is the closest the mid-game comes to a fight similar to Lace, where you're battling someone on fairly equal footing, a real duel between 2 skilled fighters, and I am, and will always be, a massive sucker for these types of fights. Perhaps it's the predictability of the fight that I enjoy though. Second Sentinel knows how to use their moveset, but it's not as annoyingly erratic as the Pinstress, nor does the boss have anywhere to hide in the arena. They're okay with you approaching them because they have the tools to knock you back if you're too aggressive. Second Sentinel is just a fun time, if a tad bit easy, regardless of your needle upgrade. At number 12, we have Grandmother Silk, the final boss of Silksong's Act 2. And the last fight needed to achieve the Weaver Queen, Snared Silk, and Twisted Child endings. Monarch of Farloom and the primal source of silk. Heart of the haunting, long lulled to slumber and desperate to wake. The higher being's threads stretch throughout Farloom, snaring its bugs and driving them to madness and discord. There is nothing as intimidating in a Hollow Knight game as the prompt, challenge. In the first game, we challenged the sun itself, while in Silksong, we challenged the very essence of silk itself. What I wasn't expecting though was for how easy I ended up finding Grandmother Silk in comparison to Hollow Knight's Radiance, but I don't mean that in a negative way. The Gilf, as we called her on stream, has a very simple yet tightly designed moveset that isn't that difficult to learn. She's got 6 floating needles which make up the crux of her attacks, often sending them at Hornet in sets of 3 from either vertical or horizontal directions, and you've just got to find the gaps between them to avoid the damage. The challenge is just in ensuring the needles remain on screen for you to react to, as if you tried to run away from the boss, she might summon the needles off screen and you won't be able to dodge them. Nerve is a virtue here, there's no need to use the whole breadth of the arena once you understand her patterns. She can also summon all 6 needles to attack you at the same time, either horizontally or as a vertical rain. The vertical rain tends to combo in with Grandmother Silk's claw attack, where she'll swipe across the arena in an attempt to smack you, and you have to dodge the swipe and the raining pins. Her most dangerous ability though is her silk webbing. She'll shriek, sending patterns of lines across the screen, and if you're touching one when the attack triggers, you'll be caught in a grab animation that deals 3 masks of damage. It's not hard to avoid, even when she starts to combo multiple lines together in the latter half of the fight, but just the threat of a 3 mask attack is enough to have you on edge. Midway through the fight, she fakes her own death, introducing rock falls to the proceedings. Gilf already had great arena control, but here she takes it to another level, also introducing metallic spikes that she can use to trap you whenever she wants you. And ultimately, all these mechanics repeat together until the boss goes down. If you're going for the first two endings of the game, Grandmother Silk is honestly not that tough, much easier than the Lace fight mere minutes before. But if you try going for the Twisted Child ending, that's when things get a little spicier, as you can become cursed as part of the Witch's Crest storyline, but while cursed, you can choose to try beating the game. You can't heal, nor do you have access to tools or Silk skills. Basically, to get the third ending, you have to beat Grandmother Silk with all these bindings, but because of how well the fight telegraphs her moveset, I actually found defeating her for this ending to be surprisingly easy. As long as you save the Cursed Crest questline for the end of Act 2, you can do this after collecting multiple needle and mask upgrades, which gives you a lot more wiggle room against the boss. It felt great overcoming her with the Cursed Crest, and the fact that Team Cherry even considered this a path you can take is honestly genius. At number 11, we have Crust King Khan, fought in the Coral Tower as part of the Old Hearts questline in Act 3. Hardened warrior lord of a bygone age, able to command the coral crust to his bidding. For his stern stewardship, his legions seem utterly loyal. For less combative bugs, his would have been a hard rule. Let's get the obvious out of the way, Khan is not a difficult fight, with the enemy gauntlets leading up to him being the real challenge of the Coral Tower memory. And yet, I don't care, because the concept of an Earthbender in Silksong is enough to boost him this high in the rankings for me. It's like fighting Toph from Avatar, except Toph would squish him like a bug. All of Khan's attacks involve him summoning pillars of coral to strike at the player. He'll do a movement, followed by smoke columns appearing to denote the attack's placement, and then pillars burst out a short while later. All you have to do is avoid them and position yourself to smack at the king as best you can. It's a fight where the moment you get into a flow state, you'll find him downed or at low health in absolutely no time flat. But one little taste of damage could completely ruin your rhythm and see you taking multiple hits as you try to panic heal back to a good standing. The challenge of Khan is how he gets faster and faster as the fight continues, meaning your time to punish certain variations of the pillars gets lesser and lesser. He can also summon spikes from the ceiling to drop onto the player in the latter half of the fight, as well as a shriek attack that summons 6 spikes on the ceiling and floor to burst into the player. I think what Khan needed to get into my top 10 was some actual melee combat ability. I think if he had a weapon that he used every now and then, his fight would be more mechanically exciting, because it effectively is a dodge the environment challenge while ensuring Khan doesn't drop on top of you by mistake. In that sense, I can see why some people might not care for him, but I just think the concept is extremely novel, and it's a fight that brings me a lot of joy. As I always say, difficulty isn't everything in these games, and sometimes just experiencing a fresh take on a moveset is all I really want. At number 10, we have Phantom, the alternative final boss of Act 1, found in the Exhaust Organ. Mournful creature, tasked alone to expel the Citadel's choking refuse. Their talent with a long pin is unmatched. Though grey with age, their frayed forms suggested a being strung from silk, one who welcomed a decisive end in combat over a slow decline. It goes without saying, but being a giant reference to the Phantom of the Opera is one way to win a spot in my top 10, but Phantom manages to go the extra mile by being an extremely enjoyable fight, which really threw me for a loop when I first fought her. Phantom uses the long pin in battle, forcing Hornet to be very careful with her movement to succeed here. The reason being that Phantom will often throw her pin, which acts as a dangerous hitbox, before dashing shortly after towards her weapon, with her body also being a hitbox. So you need to dodge the pin, then position yourself to dodge Phantom, while also making sure you're near enough after her movement to get a few hits on her, if she doesn't parry and attempt to slice you down first. She's definitely harder with the Hunter's Crest, as the diagonal pogo makes it harder to punish certain attacks, but she's doable regardless. I also love that as the fight continues, the smoke from the exhaust organ begins to build up, with Phantom being able to use the smoke to teleport across the room at a moment's notice. Her biggest major attack though is her Lightfall, where she'll mark a portion of the field and you need to dodge out of the way to avoid her incoming slam. She can combo this up to 5 times if she wishes in the latter half of the fight, but avoiding the final slam down leaves Phantom vulnerable for a short second. Follow this up with a really cool moment of victory where you learn the cross-stitch parry, and Phantom ends up far more memorable than the last judge. You don't get a new upgrade from Fire Mommy, but you do from Neglected Silk Daughter. I honestly feel Phantom is the better, more interesting way to get into Act 2, and will definitely be my preferred route on future playthroughs, even if it means going through Sinner's Road and the Mist. At number 9, we have Trobbio, fought at the end of the Whispering Vaults area, on the stage. Haughty thespian, convinced that only dazzling performance can raise Farloom from the throes of death. His desire to see Farloom saved may have been well-intentioned, but he seemed quite happy for others to die upon the stage in pursuit of his goal. Trobbio is every theatre kid you have ever met. Flamboyant, dazzling, the protagonist of their own story, and if he existed in our culture, he probably would end up being a beauty influencer and struggling actor on the side. You can tell that Team Cherry love this guy because he gets 2 distinct boss fights, and both of them are full of charm, care, and passion. His first encounter sees you dealing with his excitable personality, as he has a whole host of attacks to overwhelm you. His main being the Wondrous Whirlwind, where he'll coat himself in a tornado and slide along the floor of the arena, before eventually releasing the winds in an arc in either direction. This attack does 2 damage and is one of the toughest to avoid, as Trobbio loves to break it out while you're dealing with his other attacks to catch you off guard. His other main attack are his smoke bombs. He'll throw out 3 bouncy bombs which eventually explode with either a vertical or horizontal blast, and you have to avoid them or hit them away while still keeping after Trobbio. He can also throw them from beneath the stage, which makes their arcs a bit harder to predict, and as the fight goes on, he can throw multiple trios of bombs to really make you panic. His other main attack is a fabulous fireworks show, where he'll jump into the air and summon large circles of fireworks you have to avoid the AoEs of. All of this put together creates one heck of a hectic fight. Then add his pyrotechnics attack in the latter half, where you have to dodge underground fire pillars, and the fact that Trobbio has a lot of health and the usual 2 masks of damage per hit, and you've got a fight I consider to be a genuine roadblock. In fact, I know that Trobbio would ruin any of my Steel Soul runs, but what I really love about this guy is the attention to detail in his fight. From the way that the stage lights always follow him even when he's underground, to the way that you can see him moving down there by the floorboards shuffling, as well as his jovial music theme that sounds like nothing else in the game, all the way to his melodramatic death sequence where he prances around on stage getting his final moment that every actor dreams of, their character dying in the spotlight. Except he's not dead. You can actually catch him trying to sneak away after leaving the room, an animation I actually missed in my playthrough. But I got to watch my partner fuck around with Trobbio afterwards, and it was very entertaining to watch. I do prefer his harder variant in Act 3, but maybe that's just because I'm a little bit edgy myself. At number 8, we have Ska singer Carmelita, fought in the far fields as one of the old hearts needed for Act 3. Song queen of the Ska and their most talented warrior. This graceful ruler once possessed skill to rival my own. At her youthful peak, her voice united all Ska in her service. This is most likely my most controversial placement, because small spoilers for my ongoing Silksong community ranking, but Carmelita is a fan favourite, and I totally see why. She's a very unique boss design with a very difficult moveset, some of the most gorgeous music and vocals in the background, and she's the hardest of the Act 3 Old Hearts. I just happen to prefer the fights above for varying reasons, but Carmelita is a battle I really want to get better with, and I would love a boss rematch system just to fight her. My one complaint, aside from the small enemy gauntlet prior to her fight that adds nothing of value, is that as far as I can tell, her blocking is a little inconsistent. Sometimes attacks will land on her, other times they just won't, despite nothing changing. I'd love to see someone do a proper deep dive on why Carmelita is able to block attacks and what the frequency truly is. I also love that she is one of the only fights, aside from Grandmother Silk, to have a challenge prompt. That shows she was given a lot of care by Team Cherry. In her first phase, Carmelita is pretty chill. She wields her 2 curvesicles, using them to perform melee and ranged combos against Hornet, but is ultimately fairly avoidable. Her toughest attack for me at first was the Razor Spin dive, where she dives downwards as a ball before summoning a series of bone spikes in Hornet's direction. It's an attack that takes getting used to, and can be comboed rather brutally as her fight picks up later on. Midway through, her attacks speed up slightly, and she adds a few more curvesicle throws to her kit, as well as a bone charge where she'll skate across the arena while summoning bones from the floor. All of this combos with her normal moveset, and it can create a very hectic atmosphere. This isn't a fight that will easily be overcome, nor is it a fight where you're given a great deal of openings. You have to play aggressive, as passivity will get you killed. Especially in the final phase, where she decides that punish windows are for babies, and she'll begin to use all her moves, one after the other. No post-move punishes available, you have to attack her while she's attacking back, promoting this flurry of blows as both the player and Carmelita try to whittle each other down as quickly as possible. But it's also the way they abandon the grace of the dance in favor of sheer brutality in the last phase that keeps her out of being higher on my list. It's just not my cup of tea for difficulty, and I can see a lot of people getting very stuck here and frustrated. It's not for the faint of heart, but hey, we get to hear that gorgeous singing voice again, I can't complain about that. At number 7, we have Widow, 4 to top Bellheart in the middle of Act 1. Crazed fanatic, able to guide Farloom's haunted silk by music played upon it. Her body seemed a weaver's, but her mask had been forcefully removed, and her own silk was bound useless by heavy pins lodged through her spine. And here we have my favourite fight from Act 1. Widow is what I consider to be the final exam of Silksong's early game. If you can beat Widow, you can beat Silksong. That's my hot take, and I'm sticking to it. What I love is that no matter when you face her in the game, you will always have the same power level, because defeating her is what unlocks Pinmaster Pliny, which means that Team Cherry could perfectly design her challenge for your starting nail. It's right when players are thinking, God, all these enemies are tanky, and Widow stands there as your final challenge to, as Hornet would say, get good! What I love about Widow is how her fight feels hectic initially, but when you break it down, she's actually quite manageable. Her main attack is the bell pull, where she'll pause somewhere in the arena and begin yanking on strings to send bells flying at Hornet. I like that these are clearly marked, allowing you to reposition, and if you're close to Widow, you can attack her while she's in this animation for some good damage. She also has an aerial lunge, followed by a series of claw swipes in Hornet's direction, which is very grim-coded from Hollow Knight. She has a debris attack where she'll skitter from one side of the room to the other, launching debris upwards as she moves, which you have to float over, and all of this ties together to create a very frenetic fight. You're dodging attacks, getting all those hits on Widow, learning your timings. You might die a few times, but the run back is fine once you've unlocked it. Then you get the final strike. She goes down. Psych! Widow enters her enraged state where all she can do is pull diagonal bells from the ceiling, scream to cause vertical bells to fall from the ceiling, and do a little charge attack from left to right or right to left, but without the debris danger. Her moveset here is much simpler than her phase 1, but because the tempo of the music increases, and the fact she faked you out with a death, you're more likely to be thrown off of your game initially, and it'll take you time to adapt. But once the new moveset clicks, Widow goes down in record time, and you obtain the Needle-In as a reward. What I love about Widow is that Team Cherry were willing to throw a boss like this at the player so early in the game, but with the faith that we would overcome her. With the faith that we would realize a lot of her difficulty is just in passing together what is threatening in her arena and what isn't. This was an example of a good difficulty spike, where it felt manageable because the runback wasn't absolute dogshit and we could really take in Widow's moveset. At number 6, we have Lace, fought in the cradle during Act 2. A bug born entirely of thread. Much silk would have been needed to see her sustained. A fragile form of life, but life nonetheless. We were all waiting for the rematch against Lace, as in the reveal trailer for Silksong all those years ago, we saw footage of Hornet facing off against her in a field of white flowers. So I spent the whole game waiting for those flowers to appear, and when I got the threefold melody, I knew the moment we went to cutscene what was coming. Lace awaiting us, weapon at the ready, to give us a real thrashing. This is Lace at her strongest with her current abilities, and I really love that she goes all out here. Her moveset remains the same as her Deep Docks encounter, but with a few tweaks to make it more threatening. Now, her parry has two states to it. The regular riposte, where she flurry rushes you as you attempt to back away, but also the riposte where she warps into the air and slices her needle in a downwards diagonal pattern. It's random which one she uses, but the diagonal parry I found was actually quite punishable. Her attacks are faster now, her melee combo now has a third swing, and upon dealing with her lunge dash, she can combo it into her air dive if you're close to her. But overall, staying calm and not moving too much is key to fighting Lace, because a lot of her attacks are very speedy, very movement based, and thus it's often just a case of small repositioning that can give you the punish windows you need. It's also worth noting that the right wall of the arena is very high, so if you need to emergency heal and you can't get a safe moment in the bottom of the arena, head to the right wall, climb to the top, and then double jump into the air where Lace can't hurt you. Just don't heal on the wall itself, as she is able to follow you up there. Phase 2, she shouts and upgrades 2 of her attacks. Her lunge dash is now a double lunge dash, so you have to be ready to dodge again after avoiding her first attack, and this can often be comboed into her Ballistra air dive, which now has her leaving trails of circles behind as she ascends. Thus, the safest place to be during this attack is right below her, as when she lands you'll be between the circle and Lace, able to punish. Lastly, upon her final enrage, she'll bring back the Moulinet attack, except she chains together 2 of them, so you have to punish the second one and not the first. If you're caught in it as well, you still take hefty damage. She gets faster as the fight goes on too, but keeping calm is key to beating Lace, something I couldn't do in my first playthrough because my generous viewers were donate bombing me with channel memberships and super chats. It was a magical moment, I'll never forget, but goddamn did they want me to be stuck against her for a while. She only misses out on my top 5 purely because Lost Lace is a thing, and I didn't want her dominating my top 5 with 2 entries when there were other bosses I could feature instead. At number 5, we have Shrine Guardian Seth, Guardian of the Shellwood, who keeps us from Nihilith's Shrine in Act 3. Eternal Defender of the Shellwood's Shrine, his pin and symbol show many marks of their use. He offered fair warning and challenge, a duel in the purest sense. I admire his honour and his skill. Before we get into the fight itself, I will of course mention that Seth was the creation of Seth Goldman, a young man who sadly passed away from cancer many years ago. He was a big fan of Team Cherry, they wanted to meet him, and after drafting up a character design, they offered to include him in Silksong as a boss. From what we know, he did get to see his character's design, and potentially even a playable version of the boss fight from back then, and he is mentioned as a special thanks at the end of Silksong's credits. This was a great fight for the community, and they knew they had to nail it and make him fun. And goddamn, they just put Captain America in this game, and I love it. As Hornet says in her journal, Seth is a pure duel between 2 very distinct characters, Hornet and her needle, Seth and his shield and pin. But what I love about Seth is how his shield completely mixes you up. He has shield throws, many of which will target your muscle memory for how you've been dealing with fights so far. It's all about knowing which shield throw is coming and where the attack ends, because Seth will warp directly to that spot. He's also got shield slams, which cause a golden AoE, and sword swings that have a lunge effect to them to close distance. His shield blocks most attacks from above, forcing you to fight him from the sides, which has you getting in close to deal damage, which is also the riskiest place to be against Seth. His toughest attack for me was the diagonal shield throw, where he launches it at the ground, only for it to bounce upwards, continuing the diagonal trajectory. It hit me multiple times because I was thinking, I'll jump up, he'll come down with the shield, I pogo, damage. Only to realize that's not the move he was using, and the damage that came shortly after was done to me. And that aerial shield throw becomes a staple of his kit in the latter half of the fight, as he combos it with all his other aerial attacks to stay out of reach. He makes your life extremely difficult, but has a lot of openings with his other attacks to where you never feel like your punish windows are gone. Like Lace in the last entry, Seth is a fight where you need to be reactive to his moves in the moment, Anticipating them can lead to accidental muscle memory dodges that get you smacked in the face, and I really love that you've just got to lock in to succeed here. All while one of the saddest boss themes is playing in the background. We all know why. Seth is a very emotional fight for everyone who knows the story behind his character, and I'm just glad his fight ended up being fair, fun, and simple enough that I wouldn't mind learning it better. And the fact that Seth's character canonically lives through this encounter and gets to explore Farloom is actually really sweet. RIP Seth Goldman, and welcome to the top 5, Shrine Guardian Seth. At number 4, we have Tormented Trobbio, who can be fought as part of the Pain, Anguish, and Misery Wish in Act 3. Depressed thespian, consumed by the melancholy of a collapsing world. This one chose to embrace the doom to come. I shall not share such easy surrender. He's back! Trobbio returns in his depressed emo phase, convinced that everyone is going to die and choosing to take the edgy route. I just think nobody asked him to go to the Flea Festival and he's upset. Seth, you want to take Trobbio to a nice place? I'm just saying, I can see the sparks between those two. Tormented Trobbio uses the base moveset of his original fight, but all of his attacks now have variations that make them more dangerous, as well as having more health on top of that. His whirlwind attack now creates larger projectiles where he launches them off in either direction, with them also leaving a sparkly trail that can cause explosions if you're caught within. This makes the whirlwind tougher to punish, as failing to be in exactly the right spot will get you caught up in not just the projectile blast, but also what comes after. His firework attack, where he causes firework AoEs to appear, now has him creating either a plus or X-shaped blast emanating from himself, making this a unsafe move to punish now. And his smoke bombs also take on these properties, creating plus and cross shapes from their explosions, which leaves you less room to move around in. Bomberman who? And when he uses his pyrotechnics attack later in the fight, there are now extra fire pillars to avoid. I just really like Trobbio. I think his two fights, while similar, offer a real sense of difficulty. They made his moves just as strong as they needed to be. I love the music in the background with the Trobbio chants if you listen closely, and your reward is an upgraded version of his mirror tool, which I actually used during my first playthrough. There's not much else to add. I covered most of the details in his initial entry, but what I will say is that the theatrics of emo Trobbio, especially that introduction, will live rent-free in my mind for all eternity. If you've gotten this far, you can figure out which 3 fights are left. They all have their own strengths, and depending on what you prioritize in your boss fights, any one of those top 3 could be your number 1, and I'd get it. So no matter what the order is for me, let it be known, these last 3 fights are absolutely peak, and it's by the smallest of margins that I rank them. So be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all of my future videos. We're trying to reach 50,000 subscribers, and let's dive right in to the bronze medalist. At number 3, we have the first sinner found within the depths of the slab during Act 2. And I think it's utterly insane that one of the best fights in the game is hidden in such a devious little location that most players are going to miss without a guide. Ancient Weaver, condemned for a transgression lost to time. This one's husk held a masterful talent, to weave silk into blazing runes. Throughout my life, I have seen runes woven for many tasks. Was she the first to hone such skills? The first sinner is effectively a souped-up version of Widow and Grandmother Silk, utilizing mechanics and moves from both of those fights, but in a trial setting where if you win, you obtain the Rune Rage skill, but if you lose, you don't die. The first sinner doesn't kill Hornet, meaning this is a safe fight during Steel Soul. Her main attacks revolve around her needle weaving, where she'll utilize the power of silk to pull various needles from the ground to attack Hornet in different patterns. Vertical rains, diagonal arches, horizontal slashes. It's not quite as intense as Grandmother Silk, but extra patterns add a fun tension to the proceedings. She also has an aerial lunge that she can combo from her needle weaves, where she'll attack diagonally towards Hornet with 2 large swipes. And like Widow, she has a frenzied charge that you need to jump over to avoid. Unlike Widow though, the first sinner has far less downtime to punish, often teleporting around the arena and forcing you to really work for those moments you can damage her. After losing a certain amount of health, she'll also gain the ability to bind her own silk, healing herself for 130 HP if Hornet doesn't stop it in time. So you need to wait for those moments and counter before she can gain her energy back, all the while dodging her fast-paced moveset. Similar to Widow, the first sinner also pulls the Fake Out Death card, enraging and attacking at an even faster pace, while also summoning the Rune Rage Silk skill, which makes a series of circular AoEs that you need to keep away from as they explode. Managing all these attacks will ultimately net you the win, as you bind the first sinner and claim her ability for yourself. She's what Widow could have been had Widow's silk not been binded and cut by the pins in her spine. She is a true Weaver warrior, whose abilities test both Hornet and the player to their very core. And she's a fan favourite. My only pet peeve is just how much she teleports, which can sometimes get a tad old, as it did on my second playthrough where she managed to kill me a couple times. But on my first playthrough, I did beat her first try, and felt pretty dang good about it. If this is the quality of boss fights we can expect in the future, I am all for it, Team Cherry. At number 2, we have Lost Lace, the true final boss of Hollow Knight Silksong. Silk-spun child possessed by the void. To quell the mother's rage and see this kingdom saved, I will claim her back. This one, the dark shall not take. Fought upon diving into the void with the Everbloom in hand, this is the form Lace takes when empowered by the void, and with it she becomes my hardest fight in Silksong. And yet once you get used to her moveset, I find her to be one of the most satisfying fights to learn in the game. She retains her moveset from her previous fight, but now everything is voided. She can teleport throughout the arena at a whim, and she now has new void-aspected moves to really mess you up. She can now shoot void tendrils at you. Her dash attack combos up to 3 times and leaves void tendrils behind her, which makes punishing it more difficult. But at least her ballista doesn't start with those circular AoEs being the normal aerial variant. After the first stun, she'll begin laughing maniacally, activating her new void attacks, which you've likely encountered across various enemies in Act 3. She can summon patches of void tendrils from the ground, which Hornet needs to dodge, though Lace can also dive and re-emerge from one of the tendrils to surprise the player. She can summon 3 glowing circles in mid-air, which fire homing void projectiles at the player, which I found to be the toughest attack to avoid in conjunction with everything else Lace is doing. She can summon void blobs which hit the ground, followed by a circular slashing motion you need to avoid, though she's stationary in mid-air when she casts this attack, which gives you vital time to punish. These attacks combo with her regular moveset to create a tough battle that ultimately ends with Lace fleeing under the Void Sea. This is when the game introduces you to the Void Waves, large tidal waves that go from one side of the arena to the other, which you need to jump over and avoid. Lace can then summon them during this next phase, weaving in her previous movesets but at a slightly less aggressive pace. That is, until her final laughter, where she breaks out the Lost Molinet. She'll summon between 2 to 4 circles in a specific order, then rapidly teleport between them, with the final circle being where she slams into the ground. Only this attack is no longer punishable, as when she slams down, she summons void tendrils around her, meaning you've just got to stay out of the way and wait for the Molinet to end. Manage this while balancing all her other moves together, and you officially come out on top, using Grandma's Silk to escape the abyss, alongside the help of our stepbrother and his besties. Of all the fights in Silksong, Lost Lace asks the most of the player, but in making it a fight against an opponent you've faced before, it lowers that difficulty ceiling and makes it more accessible to casual players, which I really like. None of the Lace fights feel like they step on each other's toes, iterating to create 3 wholly unique experiences for each act of the game, and it just so happens that Lost Lace was my favourite, and I am utterly petrified to see what an absolute Lost Lace would look like. At number 1, we have the Cogwork Dancers, fought in the Cog Core near the start of Act 2. Automatons of impeccable construction, welcoming entrance to their chambers with a display of deadly dance. 2 cogwork bugs, and yet the soul seems singular. A sad yet masterful imitation of life, imbued inside shells of iron. Is anybody surprised I'm putting the tragic Bug Yowie in the top spot? Come on now. The Cogwork dancers are the fight that if someone asks me about Silksong, I am going to remember for years to come. Not because they're difficult or anything of the sort, but because everything that Team Cherry puts into this fight blends together to create a perfect package. It starts with 2 Cogwork dancers, and the anticipation of seeing them get wound up when you first enter makes you wonder what you're in for. Then they drop down and the fight begins. Both dancers will dash in directions specified by the beams of light coming off of them, and you've got to move accordingly to avoid their slices. The first few moves are always the same, which is smart because it gives the sense that it's a real dance they're performing, not just a random series of movements. And the music in this fight complements it beautifully, with each phase change, the tempo increasing, the music getting more intense, the ticking sound ever present like the whirring of the cogs. It's just such a tone setter. Every time you defeat one enough to stun it, the process resets, with the Cogwork dancers shifting into a faster gear. Sometimes they dive into the center to attack with a flurry of central slashes, before embracing each other in a loving manner. Sometimes though, they'll leave the screen altogether, creating lines that you need to avoid as they'll dash by moments after. And when you reach the third phase, the Cogwork dancers begin to move around the room offset from one another, forcing you to change your perception of the fight and adapt on the fly. It can be surprisingly tricky too, as the dancers have a much longer reach with their weapons than you'd first anticipate. However, once you manage to destroy one of the 2 dancers, the real battle begins. The remaining bot begins to whir up, and you can feel it, he's about to go berserk. Why is the music so sad? Why is the bug moving around slowly? Why does the bug try to embrace what isn't there? I haven't seen a single reaction to this fight that doesn't end in the player feeling absolutely awful for the remaining bug. The emotional weight of what we just did and what we still have to do, attacking the remaining dancer, it hits so hard. No dialogue, none was needed. The story of these dancers is conveyed through the fight, the music, and its presentation. And all of this is wrapped up in one of the coolest gank moveset concepts I've seen in years. I wondered how they top Sisters of Battle and the Mantis Lords, and I would say the Cogwork dancers live alongside them. It reflects everything I love about a boss fight. The story, the music, the unique presentation, and then combo that with the lore you discover from the Green Prince about how they were roommates. The Cogwork dancers are my favourite boss in Hollow Knight Silksong. And that's my final list. Do you agree with my thoughts, or do you have a different top 10, top 15? Let me know down below. And again, be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. We're trying to reach 50,000 subscribers, and if you want to see more videos like this, then feel free to do that. I want to give a quick shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. It is $4.99. You get early access to certain videos, you get access to my Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 runs, and you get shout outs in the description and at the end of videos as well. So thank you so much. If you want to follow the channel, I have a Blue Sky, I have Twitch, I have Discord, and I stream every single week here on YouTube, so there are so many ways to keep in contact. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time when we rank the Silksong areas. Adios.